All right, guys, just hopping on to share a special moment with y'all. Not the typical kind of video that I do, but I just wanted to share the moment. So, this is the moment right here, right? Okay, I'm gonna tell a little bit of a story. Everybody's familiar with Buck knives, right? This is kind of a household name, a American tradition almost. This company has been around for a long time. Hoyt Buck, I believe, was the first guy that started making knives, and he actually started that in Mountain Home, Idaho, in the basement of the church he was pastoring during World War II, building knives for service members, if I remember the history correctly. And eventually moved to California. His son became involved. They were a handmade, hand-forged knife company for a long time, and eventually went public to expand the business. And there was a lot of years there where they were kind of just shoestringing it and everything. And then they started to grow and higher production numbers, and it became a production knife company. And then they eventually moved up to North Idaho. The company moved up there, and now it's on its like third or fourth generation of family member running this company. So North Idaho is where my family's from, so it's kind of neat that they're up there now. And it's just kind of almost an American tradition, you might say, at this point. Well, I bought my first buck knife, Buck 110 Hunter. I was about 14 years old. I really wanted this Buck 110 Hunter. And, I didn't understand very much about knife design and specific purpose-built knives and things at the time. But I really wanted this Buck 110 Hunter. I wanted to take it up and use it for different survival skills and bushcraft and things like that. So it was the middle of winter, and I got this. I was trying to find snow shoveling jobs. This lady hired me to split some firewood for her. She had this big pile of firewood outside. Ponderosa pine. If you know anything about firewood, not the greatest firewood. It'll burn, and it's dirty and leaves a lot of pitch and stuff like that. And it's not easy to split. But I had my not my splitting maul, but my sledgehammer and my splitting wedge. And I think I might have used a splitting maul a little bit, but I wasn't very good at that point. So I was out there for about a week, several hours a day, splitting this wood and getting it knocked down into pieces for this lady to burn in her stove. And at the end of that job, I got paid $45, and I took that $45 and I was able to buy a Buck 110 Hunter. And I still remember, that I think it's the Cocobolo wood or whatever they have on that handle, and the brass, and the leather pouch and everything, and just the smell on there. It was a good smell, and just this. It was such a cool knife, I was really happy to have been able to purchase it, and sometime later I was using that knife to build a bow and drill set for starting fires, primitive skills, and I was starting the hole or the spot for the drill to go into, and I snapped the tip of my Buck 110 Hunter off. And this was a good lesson in blade geometry, edge geometry, purpose-built knives and things like that, and the difference between, for example, a hunting or skinning knife and a bushcraft or carving knife. And so I don't know if I still have that knife or not. It might be around somewhere. But that was my first buck knife purchase. But in the years since then, this has been, almost 3 decades ago. In the years since then, I always wanted a Buck 112. And I actually kind of went back and forth between, if I remember correctly, which one I wanted to get. And I ended up getting the Buck 110, when I was a kid there. And I always wanted a Buck 112. And it's the smaller version of the knife. And the story goes that when the Buck 110 became popular, different guys in rougher circumstances and situations would use it for knife fighting and stuff. And the story goes, as I've read or heard, there was an incident on a freighter or a boat or something like that. Two guys got into it, and they were allowed to carry this Buck 110, and that's what they were using to fight with or whatever. And then they got cut up and something like that. And then after that, I don't remember if this was I don't think this was in the military. I'm really fuzzy on the details. But the point is that the authorities that be, outlawed or confiscated anything over a certain blade length. And that buck 110 hunter had a blade long enough that they weren't allowed to carry them anymore. And so hence, apparently, the buck 110, or excuse me, buck 112, which has a shorter blade. It's a smaller knife. And it's just a cool little lockback blade. So we're gonna open this together and enjoy this moment that I've been waiting for 2.5 decades for. I finally bought, I'm gonna open for the other end here. I finally bought myself one. Do I really need it? Yes, I do. Someday I'm gonna build some folding knives, and this is research for that. Anyway, this says USA made knife, imported sheath. The Buck Ranger, the Buck 112 Ranger, that's what it is. Knife made in the USA. The fact that, anybody's making anything, it's kind of coming back, right? The US made stuff is coming back a little more, but, for so long, a lot of buck knives have been made in China, but this one apparently is made in the USA, which means it's probably made right up there in Idaho. Pull out the sheath here. This is made in Mexico. Okay, that's a pleasant surprise. Listen. This isn't supposed to be an ad for Buck Knives. I'm just a fan, okay? I'm not getting anything out of this. Got to be honest, this is not as nice as the old Buck 110 sheaths, pouches. It's not as nice. It feels kind of plasticky. This isn't supposed to be a review. I don't know why. I'm just saying, but it'll do the job. I'll probably build another one for it, but it is a little flimsier than the original Buck 110 sheath, for example. But message from the Buck family. CJ Buck, he's the third or fourth generation. I can't remember. Well, this isn't my first buck knife, but it says, welcome aboard. You're now a part of a very large family. I do think it's cool. Like, the difference between handmade knives and production knives, one of the differences is accessibility. And like I just mentioned here, the quality is good enough on this sheath here. But for a lot of people, the accessibility of a decent, good enough knife, and then a company like this, it just kind of becomes a tradition almost. And that's obviously, as you can tell, the reason I'm purchasing this knife is because of nostalgia, and I want to use it too, and I want to become more familiar with mechanisms and stuff so that I can build my own at some point. That's been in the back of my mind for a long time. So multiple reasons, but nostalgia obviously is a very big part of it. So one thing that is cool that they've done for a long, long time is that they have shared their faith. And I remember this from when I bought, 25 years ago, over 25 years ago. But they still have John 3:16, for God so loved the world so much that he gave his only son, so that anyone who believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. I'm not sure which translation that is, but that's the message there. And so then they mention here, Dad said it best when he said the fantastic growth of Buck Knives Inc. was no accident. From the beginning, we determined to make God the senior partner. In a crisis, the problem was turned over to him, and he hasn't failed to help us with the answer. Each knife must reflect the integrity of management. If sometimes we fail on our end because we are human, we find it imperative to do our utmost to make it right. If any of you are troubled or perplexed and looking for answers, may we invite you to look to him, for God loves you. Amen. So that's cool. They're still cranking out good knives, and they're still sharing their faith. And they've got a warrant, unconditionally warrants that will repair or replace the found Canadian defects, material, or workmanship. Buck Knives, 660 South Locksaw Street, Post Falls, Idaho. Yep, that's right up in my old neck of the woods, my family's neck of the woods anyways. So let's pull this out here. I got the traditional or the original brass, the Buck 112 Ranger. Got some puffy stuff on here. Look at that. So I guess this wood is ebony. It doesn't have the same smell as the Buck 110 had. It was a different wood on the Buck 110. So it's kind of a shorter, it's almost a kind of a chunky look to it, but it has this sort of little bit of a guard, quote unquote, that the 110 of course doesn't have. Opens up, snaps out. You can see the spring in there holding up the locking bar. Littler blade. We've got, it doesn't say what type of steel is on here. I believe it's the 420 steel. It's the stainless with the medium carbon stainless, you know. And I'm just looking at the construction here. And of course this brass, you know, I believe these are one piece pieces here, and they're milled for the bolsters, and then the insets of the wood. I'm going to be completely honest, the fit and finish on this is not what my original Buck 110 Hunter was. Got to be completely honest on that. It's not as good. And it actually, there's some grit down in there, like some buffing compound or something. I can hear it and see it. Where's my WD? Hold on. Gotta get some WD-40. That is the Fix It. Fix It All. So for 65 bucks, that's what I paid for this. Is the value there for $65? Well, yeah. I mean, look at that. Brass, wood, steel. I haven't even seen how sharp it is, but there's definitely some buffing compound stuck on the locking areas and so forth. You know, you could use a Q-tip and get down in there. I don't like hearing grittiness when I open a brand new folding knife. That's not what you want to hear. And I really need to use the air compressor and blow all this oil out, or it's going to collect a bunch of dirt. But I'm going to wipe it off for now. Yeah, these have a hollow ground blade, and as I sort of alluded to earlier, they're not a bushcraft knife. They're not a survival knife, and that's okay. That's better. Got that cleaned out a little bit. But yeah, you can get a full grip on that thing. So I've never actually, I don't think I've actually even, might have held one of these before. You know, and part of the, this is a smaller dimensions than the 110, of course. And so maybe there's, you know, they couldn't get that as rounded as much right here with this pin, but the pins are, you know, they're a little less rounded. There's a little bit more rounding on the opening here on the brass. They're hitting that with the buffer a little bit too much. How sharp is it? Pretty sharp. Catches the thumbnail, and it will shave the hair pretty good, pretty sharp. Not too shabby. We could buff it a tad, or excuse me, strop it a tad, and get some more sharpness, which of course we will do. Yeah, there's a couple scratches on this right here from some kind of grit, you know, in the pivot there, in the mechanism. So that's not the best, you know. I mean, this sort of raises the question: has their quality gone down in the last couple of decades? Well, honestly, I would say that based on this anecdotal experience, I would say it's gone down a little bit. You know, is the value still there? Well, I would still have to say, yeah, that it is, you know, for what you're getting here and compared to other I don't like that. There's grit down in there. Compared to other products and everything like that, I would say the value's still there. But this isn't. I'm just bringing you guys along on and I'm thinking out loud here. This is just me finally getting my buck 112 Ranger after 2.5 decades, and just thinking out loud here. So this, you know, I had no intention of anything beyond that, but we're gonna have to get the air compressor on that and really get that cleaned out because you don't want that grit in there. So we've got the pouch, fits in there nicely. Snap that up, there you go. I'll put this on my belt and I'm gonna carry it. I can't have too many knives, right? EDC several knives. What do I have right now? I've got my one of my kind of Norwegian style. Been mixing it up a little bit. Anyway, there you go. Buck 112 Ranger. After 2.5 decades, I finally got me one. And I do think that the buck knife story, if you've read anything about it, I've mentioned some of it briefly, is an interesting story, and it's inspiring, and you know, they've continued to make knives and provide good knives for people, accessible knives too, not to mention. And what is that, like an 1/8 inch thick spine there? Yeah, there's such a huge market for knives. There's a market for the handmade knives that I make. There's a market for the much more accessible production knives that, you know, they're a different product. Let's just say that they're a different product with oftentimes a different customer base. But hey, we all like knives, and we all want a good knife within within our means and preferences. And hey, listen, you spend money on what matters to you. So there's guys spending all kinds of money on golf and stuff like that. So if you really want it, unless you're actually living in a tent somewhere, most of the time, if you really want it, you can afford it. And I wanted this, but this is a research piece. I've got to really look at how I might want to build a lockback knife, because I've thought about that a lot. They've got, you got the liner locks now, and those are probably the most common type of locking knife. But frankly, the lockback knife here, this is classic. This is traditional. This is the cool. This is the original, man, right? If not one of the original. It's just a cool way to build a knife. You don't have this going on. You've got just the I don't know. It's just cool. Look at that. Buck 112 Hunter. All right, listen. If you want to pick up one of these for yourself, I'm going to put a shameless plug in there. And you can click on my affiliate link. And I'll make 50 cents if you buy one of these. I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying if you're gonna, you should use my link. Well, anyway, thanks for coming along on this little journey of nostalgia and fulfillment of a boyhood dream, or whatever it is. Buck 112 Ranger. It's a neat company. They still make good knives, and I've got me one now. All right, see you guys in the next video. I gotta go make some knives.